2014. As colleagues in the ICSF, I have always appreciated Vivian's clarity of ideas, her focus on strategy, and her collaborative mindset. Although both Vivian and Lilia will be talking more about their work during these last 15 months when COVID-19 hit, I guess they will situate it in the context of the country and the work they have undertaken over the last decade and more, thereby helping us to understand the uphill task at hand when trying to secure rights of these marginalized communities. So I think it's going to be a very informative session. And Vivian and Lilia, I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Nalini, and thank you very much all for joining. I am in gratitude with Global Tapestry of Alternative team. Thank you, Ashish, Srishti, Upamayu. Thank you, Nalini, once more for sharing with us your knowledge. ICCA Consortium for the translation, very important also to be able to share in Spanish some ideas. My collective Cope Solidar, without a team behind this work that I will present to you would be very hard. Doña Lilia from Barra de Colorado, very nice seeing you with us. And before the starting, I also wanted to say that I miss Chandrika Sharma. And I want to remember her now, her spirit, because without that strong spirit of people like her, these fights and the fights that we will be carrying in the future with these new challenges are going to be impossible. I feel Chandrika's spirit every day, every time I get close to the sea. And I know that at the end is that a strength and the conviction of people like her that will keep us going even if times are not easy. Right. So thank you very much. And we will start now the presentation we have prepared for you. So Upamayu, can we share, please? Thank you. So we can move on to the next, please. So maybe some of you, as myself, can feel a little bit confused by this ocean decade. There's so many things happening. Most of them are very important, but they're hard to absorb at the end of the line. SDG 14, Global Biodiversity Framework, and a big discussion 30x30, the Great Ocean Panel papers, the local biodiversity output, the rise of coal, the SSF guidelines, some kind of frustration with the achy target 17%, COVID. And we wonder, and the marine territories of life and the people of the sea, sometimes we wonder, where are they in this ocean decade? Next, please. And most of us in our hearts feel that the real life is that in our coasts and ocean, where fishing is a very, very diverse form of life. And maybe the first idea that I would like to highlight today is that if we want to keep small scale fisheries alive, we need to keep maintaining its vitality. And being so diverse, this vitality is a key issue related to culture and to identity. So they're both linked. They cannot be separated. Next, please. If we go to the technical issues concerning the sea and its people, then the issue even gets more complicated, because we're talking here about illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, the issue of subsidies, the human rights-based approach, the issue of governance, continental fishing, which, for example, for Latin American and Caribbean countries is so important, aquaculture, gender, knowledge and information, blue economy, and monetary funds. And you keep wondering, each one of these subjects has its own dilemmas, but life keeps moving in the territories of life of the ocean people. Next, please. So I was thinking that maybe we could have a started platform of what is the spirit we really need to have moving towards sustainable use of the now very, very famous ocean resources. And I thought about four. First, the need of ethical norms to value different forms of livelihoods and how these livelihoods interact with their new normality. That means putting in place that diversity. It's not small scale fisheries in a bag. It's all this diversity that comes with that. The second one was the need to be humble about how to produce new knowledge, because particularly because it's so diverse, we human beings cannot know about everything. So this humble attitude is crucial for moving ahead. Recognizing that this sector has been vulnerabilized and marginalized, and we need a new form of solidarity that respects human rights, but that also has dignity to be able to be more just and more equitable, and recognize, as the fourth one that you see there, that the inequitable model in which we are at the moment produces discourses, but we really need a human rights approach urgently. Next, please. That said, I think the basis of the discussion today and the sharing of what Costa Rica is doing starts recognizing that fishing is a way of life. It's not only a productive activity, but it is also a productive activity. So this equilibrium and the balance between these two issues is going to be very important when we face moving ahead. By the way, that picture in the center is from Belize, a very beautiful country that has a very strong relation to the sea. And the others are of the Costa Rican small-scale fishing communities in different parts of the country. Next one, please. So let me start with the context of the country that we will be sharing with you. When we talk about indigenous people and local communities, Costa Rica has two models of governance happening. One is the shared governance model, which is represented and reflected in what we call marine responsible fishing areas. And that is under the Institute of Fishing, the Ministry of Agriculture. That's one. In this case, communities, fishing communities, agreed with the government what are the key management techniques that need to be done and developed with both knowledges to move into managing the fishery. Then we have the traditional state governance managed by the Ministry of Environment, where we have two management categories that involve the fishers, small fishers, marine management areas and marine reserves. But there, the state makes the broader decisions. Of course, then we have the private governance system where marinas are basically it for sport fishing. But this is, I'm just concentrating in the ones that are key for indigenous people in local communities. Costa Rica has not respected up to now the indigenous people's marine territories, unfortunately. We see that in other countries in Central America. For example, the Garifuna, the Miskito, the Nove Bugle, the very well-known Cunayala case are examples of governance by indigenous people in their territories and maintaining their autonomous condition. But we in Costa Rica still have a long way to move towards that. Next, please. So having said that, we also need to say that in my country, more than 86% of small-scale fisheries are non-formal. That is 8 of every 10 small-scale fishers without including women. That means we are not including the value chains, just the fisher that goes to the sea. This is a very serious situation because in the moment that we are now, the legal aspects are so important. Most of these fishers become illegal. They're non-formal. They have been there fishing for a long time, but they can become illegal to the present system. The other important aspect is that with COVID-19, they had been seriously affected basically by the reduction of tourism and because the intermediation has been reduced. So most small-scale fisheries have had trouble bringing their products out of their territories. And also we confront a very serious digital gap. And this also has really complicated the governance and participatory spaces that they used to have for sharing decision-making with other sectors. The lines of traditional markets have changed. Now we need new innovative needs for small-scale fishers to bring their products to the society, to the institutions, to the markets. And this has been a very new challenge that we have to face. Next, please. So when the government of Costa Rica started this shared governance system with the marine responsible areas, we started supporting the development of a network, a very flexible network. It's not a legal space, it's a sharing space between all these communities that had different types of governance models that included their ideas and their views in how to manage their territories. Up to now, that marine responsible fishing areas and marine territories of life network has 22 small fishing communities in working with us. 3 of them are in the Caribbean. One is Barra del Colorado. We will hear Doña Lilia in a few minutes, and others in the Pacific coast of the country. Next. And with them, next please. With them, we have been really working in association to provide capacity strengthening of their organizations, promoting collective action, starting with the support to get organized, support the legal aspects and the follow-up aspects of an organization. We have been listening to the knowledge of these communities concerning the management of their fisheries, mapping with them their main concerns about how to manage the resource, broader up the resources to other resources in the coast that they use, and not only the fish in the sea, but other resources, as you can see here, the clams. Working with the issue of rights, basically sharing the SSF guidelines and sharing the problems that we're facing at the national level with the rights of these fisheries. And also looking for alternatives for formalizing the activities that they are doing through a very interesting model of private and government model that it's called the 12 paddles that maybe later we can share. Next, please. In this capacity strengthening, next slide, please. We have been working a lot with women issues and having as a principle that women are powerful and are diverse. And in that sense, we have been able to, let's say, share the knowledge they have in these practices for the management of their small scale fisheries. Next, please. A good example is in this community of clam users in Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica. You can see how we work with small groups of women to use the knowledge into presenting this in a way that they can share with the governmental agencies their participatory management ideas, and then be able to ask for the rights to use those resources. And this has to do more than people, more has to do with people than the actual license, the response of the governments to the actual use of these territories in the past, and the recognition of that right based on the new restrictions that in the case of Costa Rica has reduced the capacity of these communities to have a legal right to use those resources. Next, please. So if you ask me, after a little bit more than 20 years of working in these marine territories of life, what do we see there? I would say that a very strong link between culture and diversity. That's the problem of losing the identities of these communities. We have seen in all serious requirements for access to tenure, land tenure, and resources for survival. We see evident traditional knowledge concerning biodiversity, efforts for sustainable use, food security happening, and a lot of leadership and collective action happening in these territories. So if we think about all these issues that we see, these territories are very resilient. And next, please. The example I'm going to share with you very shortly now is that when COVID-19 came, the network and Cope Solidar and allies that I will mention in a few minutes worked to have a solidarity fund that could approach these communities to support them in bringing out their products to a just and equitable market. This initiative that used to be first a solidarity fund has now transformed into a sea market. And here you see Araceli from Chome's Territory of Life showing us the product that women in this mangrove produce and are using now in their view based on a management plan that they have produced themselves. Next, please. So the idea of this sea market is very simple. We have small scale fisheries and its value chains. We have the consumer, and we have Cope Solidar, the network, and I have to mention here the pastoral care of the people of the sea, of the Catholic Church, supporting very much this sea market, helping us to locate these products in the areas where people can access them and buy them in a fair condition. Next, please. So if we put it in simple words, we go to these communities or they try to come out. They produce the product in a simple way. We share with the consumers, and then the product at the national level has been great. A big diversity of products that before were not there, but also a lot of learning on the livelihoods of these communities that are putting these products in our hands now. Next, please. We found out that they were ready, that they were willing, that they had the knowledge to package, to organize, to have this product available. They were respecting their own management techniques and management plans for using this resource, and they had resilience to resist the situation that they were facing. We have some pillars for this sea market. The pillars are, we are only using products coming from small scale fisheries. This is important in Costa Rica because the law says that small scale fishery can be small, medium, or large. And in that division, you find a lot of differences. So this market only works with the small scale artisanal fisheries. It deals with food security issues. We are not thinking here any exportation at all, as in other fisheries or other ideas. This is to maintain the identity, the culture, but the other pillar is dignity, and maintain that this culture has dignified and made resilience these communities now and in the past. And finally, the other pillar deals with gender issues. How can we really promote the recognition of women's work in the value chains of small-scale fisheries? So let me share a few graphs. I will try to explain. They're simple graphs. Can we move to the next, please? Thank you. These are the territories of life that have a relationship with the sea market. So remember, the network has 22 communities. We started with one, the strongest one community that has been supported for the last 20 years. Maybe some of you know this community, Tárcoles. We started with them because they had more conditions to move on and be an example that this could be done. By that, we started in March when COVID started in March, but we started in April with the idea of the Solidarity Fund. By December, 8 of these communities had joined the market and had made available different products for the market. And the last one shows the situation now in June 2021, where 10 of those communities have provided different products to the market. Still, that's like 50%. We have a long way to go to provide the conditions to some of these communities to be able to bring their product out, but we have now the examples of what is happening. Let me show you the next slide, please, because we need to put this in the context of resources so you can understand that this is a very small initiative. Year 2020, you can see that it started in April, here the left column, because that's when we started buying. We have bought during 2020 $2,000 in 20,000, well, $20,000 of product to these different communities, 8 communities. And for year 2021 up to June, we have bought close to $10,000 of product. But the important thing is that we have a positive sale trend that you can observe in the graph to the right. The blue is the first year of the pandemic, from April to December. And the orange is January to June. And you can see that we have been able to maintain. That means that the consumer is happy with the product. It's a fresh product. It costs sometimes less than half what it cost in the supermarket. And it's paying in an immediate moment to the fishers, and it's providing the conditions for them to strengthen their capacities. We have developed with the network of responsible fishing areas a protocol, an ethical protocol. If any winning occurs, I mean that if we sell and earn money, that money will return to the network. To be used in their policies, inputs, in their movements in the country to meetings, in the capacity strengthening of these organizations of small-scale fishers. The next. So remember that at the beginning I said that the hard thing for us is to maintain the vitality of these communities. We have found out that distribution of benefits is maybe the best way to maintain that vitality. And if you see the purchases from 2020 to 2021, which is at the right, when we have moved through this COVID-19 situation, we see a wide distribution of seafood purchases. And this has been maintained in the market. That means that it would be very easy to buy to the first community we were involved with, because they have a small car. They have a small car to move their product out. So we could stay and be very comfortable with that. But we need to broaden up to the hardest places to be able to bring product out of these communities. And you can see that that has been maintained. The other thing I want you to notice is those little signs around here means that these communities had started to value women's work in the value chain of their products. And as you see from 2020 in the left to 2021 in the right, there are more communities that have started valuing that work of women. A very nice example is community of Chomes, who has started a negotiation with the fishers, of that community, and they packed the product, and that helps them gain a little bit of more money. Each product has a little label that says when it was fished, where, and it's if the women has been part of that, it's also there for sharing. Next, please. Talking about distribution of benefits, the movement towards this just and equitable distribution of benefits has been wonderful in showing us the work of women in pre-fishing activities, shellfish harvest, being managers of their own communities, as Doña Sonia, making the fillets, packing it up, commercializing the product. So this is a very good way of maintaining that vitality and resilience of those communities. I'm almost finishing up to open now for Doña Lilia. Next, please. But where are we now? And what are the challenges that we are facing? This network has put on the table a new project of law in Costa Rica that is asking for access to land and access to resources, the formalization. It backs up the small scale fishing guidelines and a human rights-based approach, is now in the Environmental Commission of the Congress. It doesn't have any support, political support, which is very, very sad, but the small scale fishing groups and networks are backing it up strongly, and we would hope to have move it up in the future years. Costa Rica it could last 5 to 8 years to approve a law. So we are in that process, and we hope to be there to make this a possibility. We have a trouble recognizing traditional knowledge and participatory research. 5 of the 22 communities have produced participatory research, but the government has not accepted that yet. 2 of the communities have sued the government for this situation and have bring the state to justice, and we are waiting for the justice system to produce a conclusion on this, because all the law and all the rights says that this should be considered, but the government is really not listening to the knowledge of the people. We are not sure if the 30 times 30 is going to be a threat, but certainly if we have non-formalized fishers, small scale fishers, this is going to go against. If the government, we have an example now, because you know that Costa Rica is in the head with France with this initiative. The government's already putting in practice the 30 times 30 in the south of the country with a big national park. And one of the communities of the marine responsible fishing areas is there, and they are against it, because that is going to have, as they said, impacts in the way that they are doing sustainable use of their marine resources. And this is having an impact. So we don't know yet if that is going to affect, but certainly we have doubts, and we are wondering how we are going to react to this. And we have an example, an innovative market that help us defend the SSF rights. I would like now, the next please, to open up for questions, if Nalini says that, or maybe listen to Doña Lilia as you preferred, and then open for some questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lillian. I think we'll listen to Lilia first and then go ahead. Yeah.
Muy buenos días. Muy buenos días. Mi nombre es Lilia Briones, pescadora y peladora artesanal de Barra del Colorado. También represento parte de la red de áreas marinas de pesca responsable y territorio marinos de vida. En Barra del Colorado tenemos juntos 2 formas de gobernanza. Una es una área de pesca responsable y de manejo donde está Incopesca, y la otra es la área de manejo donde está SINAC. Estas son contrapartes de trabajos pesqueros que realizamos en la comunidad. Les voy a contar un poquito más de la actividad de nosotros en Barra del Colorado. La pesca aquí artesanal es un 90% pesca artesanal, que cumple un papel importante para nosotros, especialmente las mujeres. En Barra del Colorado, la pesca de camarón es muy diferente a la zona del Pacífico. Aquí se hace manualmente. En el Pacífico se da una pesca semi-industrial. A través del voto que se ha dado desde hace 4 años, se nos ha vencido las licencias de pesca del camarón. Hemos estado luchando para que el gobierno nos dé los permisos y los estudios para poder seguir pescando el camarón, y hasta hoy se nos ha denegado, que por falta de estudios, que por esto, y el año pasado no se pudo hacer nada por lo del problema del COVID, pero seguimos en la lucha, ¿verdad? Hasta poder seguir, porque es un gran trabajo para las mujeres. Las implicaciones que tenemos, que no nos dan el permiso de pesca para realizar el estudio del camarón, se da que perjudica mucho a las mujeres, ¿verdad? También no se reconoce el trabajo de las mujeres aquí. Muchos años se ha dado que se han sido invisibilizadas las mujeres en el trabajo de la pesca. También necesitamos fuentes de trabajo, que un trabajo digno, un justo salario, especialmente para las mujeres, ¿verdad? Porque a través de eso hay madres solteras que mantienen sus casas, jefas de hogar, que tienen que llevar a sus niños a la escuela, levantarse muy temprano para poder hacer todo ese trabajo y se ven perjudicadas tanto en su salud como en recursos humanos, económicos, muchas cosas de esas, ¿verdad? También que han sido invisibilizadas. Por eso hemos organizado aquí en Barra de Colorado para tener 2 asociaciones, tanto de mujeres como de varones, para trabajar en conjunto para buscar necesidades y soluciones en nuestras comunidades, tanto para, ¿cómo le podría decir? Con instituciones y con organizaciones ONG, ¿verdad? Que han estado de la mano con nosotros en esta comunidad. También le podría decir que aquí nosotros tenemos problemas con las tenencias de tierra porque hay una institución que es dueña de todas estas franjas fronterizas, costeras, que para construir algo tenemos que tener el permiso de esa institución para nosotros poder construir algo. Ahorita tenemos 3 años, la Asociación de Barra de Colorado está pidiéndole, solicitando a esta institución dueña de estas tierras que nos den el uso de un terreno y se nos piden documentos y documentos y hemos dado todo para que ellos nos digan un sí y 3 años y todavía no nos han podido decir si les vamos a dar este trabajo. Esta institución se dice ser el desarrollo para las comunidades, pero aquí nos ponen trabas, nos cierran puertas, especialmente a las mujeres, porque no nos dan fuentes de trabajo y no nos dan una oportunidad para superarnos con todas las necesidades que tenemos. También tenemos otro problema en nuestra comunidad, que es el transporte de combustible. Ahorita, si realmente se aplicara la ley, no pudiéramos ni las mujeres ni los pescadores pescar en nuestra comunidad, porque hay una ley que prohíbe transportar combustible. Entonces, el gobierno no nos da esos derechos que tenemos a un trabajo digno, que necesitamos todas las comunidades costeras para poder sustituir las necesidades que tenemos en nuestros hogares, como unas como jefa de hogar y otras como pescadoras y esposas de pescadores de estas zonas. También podría decir que contamos con un poquito del mercado y el valor que nosotros tenemos de los productos, que a través de Costa Solidar hemos podido salir adelante, ¿verdad? Porque como ustedes mismos saben, el COVID nos cerraba puertas de mercado que no podíamos sacar el producto a vender. Entonces, a través de ellos, el año pasado nos ayudaron con los productos que teníamos para la venta y gracias a Dios pudimos venderlos, ¿verdad? Entonces, poquito a poquito hemos ido agarrarnos de la mano con las diferentes instituciones y buscar soluciones a nuestras necesidades. Es un placer para mí estar hoy aquí y representando a estas mujeres pescadoras, ¿verdad? Porque realmente, como les digo, hemos sido invisibilizadas por muchos años. Necesitamos que el gobierno nos reconozca como mujeres luchadoras, pescadoras del todo el sector pesquero y de las zonas costeras, tanto como Pacífico y Caribe, que somos bastante, ¿verdad? Y como decía doña Vivian, a veces se nos cierran las puertas, no nos dan los permisos para pescar legalmente, tenemos que buscarlo ilegalmente y las autoridades ahí están en ese momento quitándoles todo, el equipo, las embarcaciones y de todo, y hasta deteniendo a los compañeros de las diferentes y maltratando a veces a las mujeres, ¿verdad? Entonces, uno les pide al gobierno que por favor se pongan esa mano en el corazón y abran esas puertas para dar soluciones a las comunidades más necesitadas, no solo en Costa Rica, en diferentes países, ¿verdad? Que nos den esa oportunidad de ser personas dignas, que somos humildes, que buscamos una pesca responsable, porque sí, es responsable y sostenible con el ambiente. Hemos tratado de una u otra manera buscar soluciones que hay en los problemas, tanto en el cambio climático, en las contaminaciones. Todas las comunidades siempre hemos buscado soluciones a todo esto. Entonces, creo que sería de más hablar más, ¿verdad? Que todo esto, el gobierno debe buscarnos una solución y unirnos cada día más, tanto las mujeres como los pescadores, a luchar por nuestros derechos. Sabemos que tenemos deberes, pero también tenemos derecho a tener un trabajo digno, como somos las mujeres de toda Costa Rica, y que necesitamos que nos den fuentes de trabajo y ser reconocidas mundialmente como mujeres pescadoras de la parte de Costa Rica. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Lilia. Thank you very much for sharing your struggle. For those of us who work with small communities, we can very well identify with you and your struggles. This idea of making women's work and women themselves visible is a huge part of the struggle that you all have built up, and really appreciate it. Vivian, thank you for setting the context and helping us understand that although there's so much talk about the oceans today, there's absolutely no talk about the little communities that depend on the oceans, and this is the tragedy of our day. But I admire that you've been able to help communities advance their market sales, and through all the collective work you've been doing all these years, which I think is wonderful, because COVID has proven to us that the shorter the value chain, the more sustainable it is. And I think this will bring things back onto the table if we learn from COVID for the future. But I think one of the big issues that you have mentioned is this informality, which you call illegal. I think that's interesting for us from India, for instance, where we have a huge informal sector. It's informal without any rights, official rights, but they're not illegal. It's a part of the way work is organized, and the larger proportion of people in our countries are informal workers. So this fact of them being illegal in your part of the world is another aspect altogether. And I think it's very important that we reflect on how then such informal work, the tenure that these people require, can be formalized. And that is a big struggle in all over the world today, I think. So, friends, I think we've all appreciated what Vivian and Lilia have shared. The floor is open for questions. I'm not sure whether anybody has posted anything in the chat box or in the question and answer, but I think Shrishti is going to help us with that. Shrishti, are there any questions there? Or we just request people to raise their hands and open their mics?
Yeah, there's one question by Jyoti Krishnan.
Yes.
And if Jyoti, your mic and connection is good. Maybe you can ask your question yourself.
Jyoti, go ahead.
Thank you, Vivian, for that very beautiful presentation, and also Lillian, who spoke from the heart after that. I would just like to know, when you set up this women-centered local chain, to promote sales of products, what was the kind of local resistance that you faced, apart from the fact that the government considers this illegal? What is the kind of resistance that you faced locally? Did you face that kind of resistance, and how did you deal with it?
Thank you for the question. I think there are more two issues here. One is that a network, I'm not sure why, but government can only work with formal structures. All of a sudden, we have figured out that they're not willing to work with things that are more for sharing, for strengthening our capacity. So the network itself, that network of different areas that are doing small scale fisheries in the country, has been asked to be formalized itself. That means to put into a legal structure that from our experience would not work. So the first challenge we face is to show the government in these last 10 years that this network has been functioning, that we don't need to formalize a structure where fisheries have to have writing acts and meetings, but we can have a more flexible structure that could have as an objective, a key objective of sharing, and where these communities can go in and out as they can, as they are interested in. And in that sense, we have seen a very important participation of women has really strengthened this networking. And we have been at times capable of moving on as a network because women are ready to move on with this situation. And I think that's a key challenge. But I think that when we think innovative ways for a new normal, that has to be there. We don't have to formalize everything. As Nalini was saying, we don't believe these people are illegal at all. Legal structures make them illegal, and unfortunately the law in Costa Rica, I think it's like that everywhere, has to be applied. And so even the official functionaire said, I really know you are from our community, but I cannot do anything. You don't have your license and I have to take your equipment away. And that has made it very hard for us to really move on in a dignified way, because honestly, I believe that this situation is criminalizing the culture and the identities of these communities. So the network and the market are not a network and a market themselves for other objectives than to ask for those rights. And I am not sure if there are too many examples of an economic enterprise to defend rights, but that's how we want to see this small market. That's how we want to see this small network, something that it's used for the broader objective that we know is structural, is a big structural problem. But if we don't face that, we're not going to have equitable distribution of benefits, and our fishers, small scale fishers, are going to disappear. I'm not sure if I answer your interesting question, but let me know, Yati.
Yeah, that's quite tricky, what you say, Vivian, because we've always believed organizing is the strength of sustainability of the marginalized and vulnerable communities. But here, as they have begun to network and organize, if their actual source of income is considered to be a illegal product, it's extremely hard. So at the same time, how do we formalize this? I think this is a huge struggle, but maybe there are others in the group who have ideas and would like to share. Please do.
And Doña Lilia, si tiene alguna comentario también. Adelante. Nalini, in what you said, I think it's
No,
very... Go ahead. Sí, adelante, doña Lilia.
disculpe, doña Vivian, no, sinceramente, bueno, siempre esperar de cada una de las personas que está compartiendo con nosotros y de los compañeros ahorita, que buscar soluciones, ¿verdad? Para las necesidades de las comunidades, como dice usted, y el gobierno, como dice uno, que se pongan en el lugar de cada una de las comunidades necesitadas y nos dé la oportunidad de trabajar dignamente, porque nosotros como comunidades siempre estamos en la lucha. Aquí en Barrio Colorado se dio un trabajo muy grande por largos años y conjunto con comunidades y ONG, especialmente Copa Solidar de la mano. Trabajamos día y noche para ponernos y pensar y decir, necesitamos un cambio, necesitamos estas áreas de pesca para que tengamos una pesca responsable, sostenible y digna, ¿verdad? Entonces, el gobierno piense todas esas necesidades, porque no solo en Barrio Colorado, Cabuya, Tárcoles, Chomes y diferentes comunidades de Costa Rica también tienen esta necesidad y están en la lucha. Mujeres de Chomes luchan y hay instituciones que a veces les cierran las puertas y no les ayudan por ser solamente mujeres, ¿verdad? Y ellas también son grandes portadoras de beneficio para el país en general. No porque somos mujeres no podemos hacer cosas, sí, las podemos hacer y las hacemos con el empeño, con el gran entusiasmo de sacar adelante nuestra familia, que hoy son jóvenes que estudian. Necesitamos dejarles un futuro bien hecho y que ellos sepan que ese trabajo, si en algún momento sus carreras que ellos llevan en las diferentes universidades no les funcionan, en nuestras comunidades tienen un trabajo digno. Entonces, es un ejemplo de mujeres luchadoras que tenemos en las comunidades. Y por eso le pido al gobierno realmente y a las demás instituciones que están luchando por buscar soluciones que nos ayuden y nosotros también ayudaremos, porque dice, juntos todo es posible, ¿verdad? Y daremos la lucha hasta el final y saber que en algún momento como mujeres seremos reconocidas dignamente como trabajadoras, pescadoras, que del mar tenemos ese sustento día a día.
Nalini, gracias, doña Lilia. There's a question in Spanish in the chat. May I ask, translate it and then answer? It's from Nadia Johannisova, or Nadia, maybe you would like to ask the question?
I can ask the question, but not in Spanish. I'm not so good. No hablo tan bien el español, so I can say it in English if possible. I know so little about the communities, how they function. I would just, to imagine it better, I would be interested to know, for example, do the people fish together or each family alone? And when the women work with the fish, is it the family members, or is there some group? And how actually do the markets happen? Is there a truck which goes in the morning to the town, and how far is it? Is it a market? How, because for me it is a bit abstract because I'm not living there. I can't imagine it so well. So I would just be interested in some details how it's actually working in a typical community.
We have a big diversity, but maybe doña Lilia can share with us cómo se pesca el camarón, how is the shrimp fishing occurs in Barrio de Colorado?
Bueno, en nuestras comunidades se trabaja por familia, ¿verdad? El dueño de la embarcación son los compañeros, los esposos, los hijos. Ellos van al mar, traen el producto y nosotros como esposas, hijas y de todo, estamos en la segunda parte de que podemos producir en la casa todo lo que es el producto. Especialmente nosotros trabajamos con lo que es el producto del camarón. Aquí en las partes de las orillas del río de nosotros, damos el procedimiento, el proceso para que ese producto llegue bien a los compradores del producto de camarón. Entonces, en la mayor parte, como en Chomes, trabajan especialmente las mujeres, tienen un grupo bien organizado donde ellas tienen su recolección de moluscos y todo eso. Entonces, hay otros sectores que sí pescan independientemente. Entonces, es una parte que como un poquito complicada, ¿verdad? Pero sí tratamos de trabajar en equipo para que todo el trabajo sea bien organizado.
I believe that every fishery is in a different way. The importance of the shrimp fishery in Barra de Colorado is that per every license of fisheries there's close to 25 to 30 women that work in the peeling of the shrimp. So you can see the quantities. We are adding some videos in the chat if you're interested to see the images of the production that is produced in these communities. Now, how does the market works? And usually what we do is we have rounds of calls. We call the organizations of fishers that are in the network and we ask what type of product they have. What is the cost, a decent cost that covers the work they have done. And then we talk about possibilities of bringing it to the city if it needs to be brought from there, if they don't have a way out, or if they can move somehow closer to the city, then we go closer to the city to get it. And then we put it in the different offices, if it's the different offices of the different churches that are helping, or here in Cope Solidar, or we have, and then we buy the social networking networks and calls to clients. We call and say we have this new product that it's coming fresh from this community if you're interested, and people come and get it themselves in the city, in different areas of the city.
Ok, thank you. Muchas gracias. Ahora lo imagino mejor. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Thank you.
There's another question by Anna Carolina. Would you like to ask your question yourself, or if Vivian, you've already read it, had a look, so maybe you can answer, you or Lilia?
Hey, so I'm Ana Carolina. So gracias, Vivian and Lilia. Wow, I will make in English or I can do Spanish as well. But what I would like to know is a bit more of the shared governance setting, how the management and governance of the territory and resource take place. Like, is there a management body formed by the communities to take decisions, or do the communities have the right to take the decisions about the territories and resource? I think to summarize a bit is just like to understand more about regarding the community rights on the shared governance, because the name is nice, like shared governance, but like how, what does it imply related to the community rights to, manage and govern their territory and their resources? Thank you very much, gracias.
Vivian, you are on mute.
Unmute, Vivian.
Yes, thank you for the interesting question, deep question, a very interesting one. I'm gonna say the theory, and maybe Doña Lilia can help me with the practice in Barra, which is in this case a very interesting example. In the case of shared governance, there's a management plan that is a fishing plan that it's done with both the fishing organization that is requesting the recognition of the marine area and the governmental institution. And that is the guide. And that plan has a governance body. The true is that in the examples we have, at the end, the government is the one who leaves, how do you say, he leaves, and the fishers kept making most of the decisions concerning the management of that area. And we are now doing a small study in Tárcoles to prove that this is happening, really, because you have to really comply with that management plan. And obviously that is not really happening. In the case of the state governance or the government governance system, which is the one that we have in Barra de Colorado for the longest time, Doña Lilia can tell you they have a very good example of a governance system for the marine refuge. Right, Doña Lilia? Can you tell us about the Comisión de Toma de Decisiones allá?
Claro que sí. Bueno, aquí ha sido un trabajo muy satisfactorio, ¿verdad? Porque en conjunto con las instituciones y la comunidad se han tomado acuerdos muy beneficiosos para la pesca. Tanto si hay que cambiar el sistema de las artes de pesca, en la parte continental, en la parte marítima, todo esto estamos haciendo el plan de manejo específicamente como debe de ser y con beneficio tanto para las instituciones como para las comunidades, ¿verdad? Siempre han tomado los conocimientos de cada pescador, hemos participado mujeres, jóvenes, adultos mayores, siempre en las reuniones que hemos tenido instituciones, Copesolidar, nos han hecho el mapeo, tenemos jóvenes que están ahorita en las mediciones de las especies que tenemos y todo eso. Entonces, nunca ha venido una institución a imponernos algo que nosotros nos queremos. La primera área que ellos querían que se conformara en Barra de Colorado era la de manejo, pero se tomó el acuerdo pescadores, que era la área de pesca responsable. Entonces, esa fue la primera que nosotros creamos aquí en Barra del Colorado y luego se tomó el acuerdo de hacer la otra área de manejo. Entonces, se ha hecho un trabajo conjunto con las instituciones, no solamente las instituciones. Y seguimos en la lucha, ¿verdad? Porque no queremos tampoco que el día de mañana nos digan no se puede hacer esto, no se puede hacer esto otro, sino que quede palpable en un documento donde se dice tanto instituciones como comunidades se tomaron estos acuerdos y esto se puede hacer y esto no se puede hacer, pero con decisión de ambas partes.
Gracias, Doña Lilia. Maybe just to clarify, then the decision-making of what to protect and what not to protect is being done at the moment in Barra de Colorado together with the fishers. The issue here is there are no rights secure. So the problem here is a very, how would I say, below the table strategy, because we are clearly seeing that when it comes to the law, applying the law, this is going to happen at some point. And if those rights are not secure, tenure rights and fishing rights, then we will be having a very, very easy process of, I would say, ocean grabbing, to call it somehow, you know, because there's no possibility to retain that. And that is why in Barra de Colorado, for example, we're working so strongly with the associations to have those rights established. You know, the fishers should have the rights of accessing the resources of the sea and the rights to land, which are important for them to stay in their houses, in their area of work. So it goes beyond governance. And it makes it very complicated. Look how mature Doña Lilia has to be to share with you the two models that are in the same territory of fishing, right? And with two institutions that work differently, come with a different perspective and work with them twice. So it is complex.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Nalini, there's somebody
yes.
from Honduras
Yeah,
sharing
please.
with us Yes, that she says that they know two women organizations that are working and that they would like to have exchanges of experiences and processes that are happening in our region. I would like to say, Ligia, that this is very important for us. We already have some contacts in Honduras and working partners, but we can share with you our contact and we would be delighted to join with you and other countries to share these experiences and share our experience and lessons learned.
Yeah. What about others? Anybody wants to speak or say something, make a comment?
Hi, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
I am Bridget Maria Thomas from Kerala, and I am pursuing my PG in Disaster Management at Loyola College of Social Science, Trivandrum. And I just need to ask one question. One of the PPT you have mentioned about blue economy, and I need to know how blue economy affect coastal people and their market. Can you please?
Yes. Well, there are two issues that are, I think, key here. The first one is, of course, the economic concentration of the concept, only centralizing that this is only an economic issue, opening the oceans to productive economic benefits is one issue that worries us. But in the case of Costa Rica, we are now presenting to the World Bank one of the biggest blue economy projects that is going to have strong effects on what is happening, basically because this non-formality of our fishers again. This blue economy project is based on consultations to external people from the communities, big payments for these private enterprises, NGOs that are going to make consults of things that we already know. You know, as you can see, we already know where the problem is here in Costa Rica with the small scale fishers. The environmental movement is very strong in Costa Rica. Unfortunately, they're not considering this non-formality issue. So when you apply a state government model, these people with no formality become unknown in their own lands. That means that they're not longer recognized as part of that culture and that territory. So we are starting, how do you say, a witch hunt? A witch hunt in this country is really serious, because when we are going to create this new protected areas in the name of blue economy to be able to support these small communities, it's going to be too late because they are no longer responded from a formalized way of life. So we are going the other way around. For example, blue economy puts the strong effort into certification of fishing products. But see, in our case, certification starts by having a license in all the different protocols. So small scale fisheries, which is the most sustainable way of using the resources of the sea, are out from the first point, because if formality is not there, then we will have serious problems. So we are looking at alternatives. Which are the alternatives? Not think about the license, but think about the will of people to do their work better and better every day. As Doña Lilia was saying, they are the ones who know how to do fishing in a responsible way. And they should be the fishers and the owners of these territories, the right holders, should be the ones that work with the government to develop this. To tell you another issue that worries us is infrastructure. The blue economy projects have huge infrastructure towards aquaculture. Costa Rica's project has a lot of money to place into aquaculture, but this is big aquaculture. It's not small scale aquaculture. And also big gathering centers in areas where small scale fishers are not located. I hope that helps. We are going to have to see the effects of blue economy later on. We hope that it is humanized and its human rights-based approach taken. Yes.
There was a comment by John, if you would like to make that comment. And then there are several other questions also. John, would you like to share the comment?
No, I think I'll leave it till it's written there, so that's fine.
Okay. Um,
What about, what are the other questions, Shrishti?
yeah, so there's another question by Bharat. Bharat, would you like to ask your question? Oh, he has mic issues. Okay. So how, Vivian, the question is, how does the damage and pollution of rivers affect the fishing communities in Costa Rica?
I also will answer, and hopefully Doña Lilia can tell us what they're doing about the subject. This is a very serious process in both sides of our coast, Pacific and Caribbean. We've been very clearly joining efforts with communities to support this issue, but as you can understand, this is coming from bigger industries and bigger sectors that are really polluting most of our rivers. And this is not touch. Just to mention an example, we have been supporting the Chomes gathering, mollusk gathering women, Cope Molus Chomes, to fight a big aquaculture enterprise that uses Clorox to kill the mangrove. And we haven't been able to bring the government to go against the big company to reduce the use of this and let this mangrove grow in that area as the women even want it to happen. But that doesn't take any attention of the government. The government is supporting now cleaning campaigns, putting the communities to clean their beaches and everybody else to clean their beaches. But the true problems that are really polluting our rivers are not taken into consideration. And I know Doña Lilia and her community have made a big effort on this issue. Doña Lilia?
Sí, como dice doña Vivian, realmente la contaminación y los desechos son los que más contaminan, ¿verdad? El mar y los ríos. Aquí nos perjudica tanto las bananeras, las piñeras, que el gobierno, como dice doña Vivian, no ha puesto mano dura sobre ellos. Y después dicen, es que en Barra del Colorado está contaminado el mar, el río, los peces tragan los plásticos y eso, pero no ven que solamente Barra del Colorado no. Las piñeras y las bananeras son los que más nos perjudican ahorita, y perjudica tanto el cambio climático también, ¿verdad? Porque no solo el río y el mar y las especies, estas contaminaciones perjudican muchas cosas, y a la cual nosotros como comunidades siempre hemos buscado soluciones y no nos han dado una respuesta positiva para podernos ayudar, y hemos solicitado al Ministerio de Salud, a diferentes instituciones que nos ayuden cómo poder parar toda esta contaminación.
Thank
Gracias.
you.
Yeah. Yeah, there's another question by Ashish. Ashish, would you like to ask?
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, big appreciation to Vivian and sorry, Lilia for this. It's been a fascinating conversation. Also, I think it's been very interesting because the Costa Rica has always projected itself as being the model of sustainable development across the world. Clearly, from the fishers' point of view, that is not that's not the full picture. My question, Vivian, was whether the 2018 UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and Small Producers, including fishers, has that been of any use at all in your campaigns?
Thank you, Ashish. Very interesting issue. I think the problem is that the Ministry of Environment works very separated with the Ministry of Agriculture, which is the one who manages fisheries issues. They are now agreeing in Costa Rica only for the 30 times 30. That means only conservation efforts are being supported, but they don't talk about other things. So even when I believe that for us as technicians, these instruments are very useful because we can go to governments and bring them out, there's no discussion or agreement in how the well-being of these communities is going to be approached from the national policies. So you see national policies for environment, national policies for production, and usually when you talk production, then fishing is out because they forget about fishing very fast in the agricultural process. And we have even our Ministry of Agriculture calling for a closure of the institution of fishing. So you can understand how hard this is for the sector itself, you know, to be able to propose changes and ideas. So I believe that we have to really see this as a very serious problem in the country where we will have to protect the most vulnerable sector first. That means that we would hope for the government at all levels to make sure that from the Ministry of Environment and from the Ministry of Agriculture, there's an agreement to move on to support this sector that it's the one that needs to be protected in terms of food security, poverty, and the needs for conservation of biodiversity. And once that is done, and for that, we will certainly use these issues of rights, right? So this declaration is important. Also, the SSF Fisheries guidelines is important. And we will use also the 169 treaty for the indigenous peoples that have not been recognized their marine territories of life. So all of this is important, and at the end, I think it's useful. But I think we still need to get those two closer. Environment and production in Costa Rica is going two different ways.
Thank you, Vivian. There's another question from Meg for Lilia. And Meg, if you know Spanish and if you can ask your question in Spanish, great. Else, maybe Vivian, we can translate it. Yeah. So, what kind of relationship does the women associations have with the men's association? Has there been any collaborations between the associations? If so, on what issues? And what are the existing challenges between the associations and possibly also for the associations?
Muchas gracias, Meg, for being with us. And for the question, Doña Lilia, ella quiere saber qué tipo de relación tienen ustedes con la Asociación de Hombres y si ha habido colaboración entre las asociaciones y sobre qué temas particulares y cuáles son los retos que existen entre la Asociación de Mujeres y la Asociación de Hombres.
Doña, bueno, sí, nosotros ha sido una buena relación en conjunto, ¿verdad? Porque la fe de la Asociación de Mujeres es trabajar para comprarle todo el tipo de especies que ellos traigan del mar. Para eso nosotros queremos construir el centro de acopio para hacer una unión entre las dos asociaciones, ya no depender de un intermediario, sino nosotras mismas comprarle el producto a ellos y negociar y procesarlo, ¿verdad? Porque en el momento que ya no tengamos mercado afuera en San José, nosotros poderlo conservar, procesarlo y darle una manipulación a aquel producto que en el momento que las cámaras o los supermercados necesiten el producto, nosotros mismas como mujeres podamos venderle ese producto, ya no depender de ningún intermediario en la comunidad, porque a veces el precio que pagan no es justo. Entonces nosotros tratar de pagarle un precio justo a ellos y también nosotros poder tener una ganancia para tener un salario justo cada una de las mujeres que trabajen en ese centro de acopio.
I'm not sure if it was translated or should I translate? Was it translated?
Yeah, that was translated.
Okay.
So possibly we can take one or two more questions. There's one question by Pradeep Chatterjee. Pradeep, if everything is okay at your end internet-wise, would you like to ask your question, or else I can?
I think Pradeep has left.
Oh, okay. So then maybe we can just take his question and his comment, and then possibly we can move towards closing. So Pradeep writes, greetings from National Platform for Small Scale Fish Workers, India. Very inspiring, and both the management of fisheries and community takeover of value chain provide very important learning. Oh, it was just a comment, sorry. So yeah, I guess that's it. Possibly Nalini ji has some closing remarks. And,
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Well, I have requested John to make the closing remarks. I would say thank
There's one
you
question
to
that's just
Vivian
come in,
and
Bridget, if you want to. Sorry, Nalini, there was one last question that just came in.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
we can quickly take that one, and then
Yeah.
Over to you, John, after that.
Yes, that's a very good question. Touristic industry is huge in Costa Rica, but in the sport fishing area too, the government is promoting sport fishing in substitution, sometimes with small scale fisheries. Even the director of the fishing industry have said that he's thinking about providing commercial rights to sport fishers, which is, as you can imagine, a very, very destructive thought, which will have impacts in the livelihood of these communities. The substitution at this moment, sport fishing can occur in Costa Rica with a license. They can go anytime to get a license, so they are formalized very easily. But there are no studies on the impacts of the use of the resources they do and they use at the moment. So this is also part, I think, of the blue economy line. And we have seriously asked to first start thinking about the impact on small scale fishing of this situation, and also provide the conditions for small fishing communities to be able to access the tourism sector with the same rights and better rights than people from the outside of these communities. And I don't know if Doña Lilia wants to say something about this, but this is an issue in the country.
Bueno, yo considero que sería un gran daño, ¿verdad?, que le van a hacer a los pescadores artesanales, porque tras que ya no tienen licencia para pescar y todavía van a tener una gran competencia a través del turismo, yo creo que sería una gran injusticia. Yo pienso que el gobierno, los funcionarios, yo considero que para nosotros es algo que va a perjudicar demasiado al pescador artesanal, ¿verdad? Las que no les quieren dar licencias, se les vence y quieren estudios, quieren esto y quieren el otro, y vienen a darle otra oportunidad a la pesca deportiva, digo que no es justo. Ellos toman decisiones allá en sus oficinas, ganan su salario, pero no piensan en los pescadores, en las necesidades que tienen realmente los pescadores en pequeña escala, ¿verdad? Ya no creo que sería bueno darle esa oportunidad a los pescadores de turismo, y ellos están legalmente, tienen sus licencias, tienen sus paquetes, tienen todo a derecho. En cambio, al sector pesquero más pequeño es al que están perjudicando por todos lados. Siempre el gobierno viene y perjudica al más pequeño, ¿verdad? Como le vuelvo a decir, toman decisiones no acuerdo con las necesidades. Yo siempre les he dicho, vengan a las comunidades, vean las necesidades de las comunidades, sientan, palpan, que palpen aquellas necesidades, ¿verdad? Porque es una injusticia que día a día usted va a ver embarcaciones a las orillas de los ríos. ¿Por qué? Porque no tienen una licencia, un derecho para ir a trabajar. Entonces yo creo que para nosotros no sería una buena opción que se le diera al turista otra oportunidad como se le está dando al pescador más pequeño.
Thanks, Lilia.
Thank you, Vivian and Lilia. I think we'll ask John to say the last few concluding words. John, please.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure. And it was a surprise that I was asked to make the concluding remarks. It's always so refreshing and powerful to listen to Vivian. And added to that, what Lilia said was also so much relevant to the context of informality that we have in India and in other countries. But of course, the way we see this informality is so different. I've had the opportunity to visit some of these communities which Vivian has been talking about. So I know from firsthand how dedicated all of them are to the cause of what they are doing. And I think that's really the building of not only the process of building this movement is so important. We always have heard of Costa Rica as an example to look up to, but it's interesting that even in such examples, there are lots of areas where much needs to be done. And I was just glancing through your constitution, and I found the three aspects there which I think are worth reflecting about. One is the concept of the citizenship, which all constitutions have, but yours is very special in that sense. It defines very clearly as to who is a Costa Rican. And in this context, I think that's very important. Lilia is a Costa Rican. Vivian also is a Costa Rican. So why should there be a difference between you and Lilia? You are part of the formal system, but she is not. The other thing is about individual rights. And the English version here says that all people are free in the Republic and that no one under the protection of its laws can be a slave. So you can't even be a slave to the law. So it's strange that some people are slaves to the law and some are not. And the third thing was, very interestingly, the social rights and guarantees, which also provides everybody the right to life, the right to work, a guarantee for association. So I think your constitution, which also a lot of people look up to, provides so many interesting possibilities, along with lots of the other international regulations and so on, which you have been referring to, the small scale fisheries, the human rights, the declaration of the peasants and so on. So I really feel that there is a strong case for arguing against this issue of informality. And you talked about markets. That was the comment I was making. I feel that we need to create more markets which are friendly to people and not create more people who are friendly to markets. And the more you make these links between producers and consumers, the more you are creating legitimacy to informality. And that is, when the producers and the consumers are willing to buy from and sell to each other, you are actually giving the foundation for legitimacy for what you have been calling as informality. Because if ultimately in the market economy, it is the consumer who decides. So if more and more consumers are in favor of the so-called illegitimate, informal people who are the real producers, then slowly that distinction, I think, can go. So, Vivian, it was always so nice to listen to you, so powerful, so clear. Thank you very much. It has been very invigorating. Thank you. And to Lilia also, whom I don't think I have met.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So with that, we close this session. Thank you to... Oh. Yes, thank you again, Lilia and Vivian. And to Global GAT for organizing this session, to all those who assisted, thank you very much, and to all those who participated too. Thank you and good night.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you especially to the
Thank you. Bye-bye.
translators for doing such a wonderful job. And thank you to ICC Consortium for facilitating the translation bit also. So thank you, everybody, for joining. And thank you, Nalini ji, for moderating. And of course, Vivian and Lilia for wonderful presentations and sharings with us. It was very inspiring.
Thank you very much. We wait for all of you here in Costa Rica. Come visit.
And also to say hello to many friends. I see Gustav is around and people that we have met in Costa Rica. Hello to everybody and all Vivian's colleagues. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Buenas
Good night.
noches.